Welcome back, Hammers. If you love West Ham news and updates, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what you think. Let's get started. When we talk about West Ham United, it is impossible to ignore that familiar feeling that has followed the club for so many years. The sense that an invisible limit exists, a ceiling that prevents the team from truly moving forward. It does not matter how good the players are. It does not matter how bright the European nights shine. It does not matter how much talent passes through the club. Whenever West Ham seem ready to take the next step, something holds them back. Some decision, some retreat, some lack of ambition at the most decisive moment. For many, this used to feel like bad luck. Over time, it became clear that it was not bad luck at all. When David Gold and David Sullivan took control, a large part of the fan base allowed themselves to dream. They arrived promising stability, growth, competitiveness, and above all, ambition. They spoke openly about transforming West Ham into a strong club, capable of aiming higher than merely fighting relegation. For a while, the plan seemed logical. A few good signings were made. A few encouraging results fueled hope. And above all, the narrative emerged that Upton Park was too small for the West Ham of the future. That is when the decisive argument arrived, the move to the London Stadium. This change was sold as the step that would lift the club to the next level. More capacity, more revenue, more relevance, more strength in the market. The sacrifice of leaving the Boleyn ground would be compensated by a project that was big, bold, and modern. The fans hesitated, protested, resisted. But in the end, many accepted the idea that this painful leap would open a new horizon of possibilities. At least, that is what everyone was led to believe. But when the dust from the move finally settled, the first signs began to appear that the project might not have been as grand as promised. The club always seemed to fall short of expectations. Window after window, promise after promise, the persistent feeling was that West Ham never truly behaved like a club that had taken a monumental step towards growth. The impression left behind was that the move to the new stadium had not been followed by an equivalent shift in the mentality of the board. As the years passed, it became clear that a pattern was repeating itself. Every time the team reached a good moment, the board stepped back. When heavy investment was needed to consolidate progress, they opted for the minimum. When the chance arose to complete the squad with genuinely decisive players, the cheaper or riskier option was chosen. When the club needed planning, structure, and ambition, it received only prudence disguised as caution. It was always enough to avoid disaster, but never enough to build something truly solid. This constant behavior revealed an uncomfortable truth. West Ham were not being limited by football's natural constraints or by simple errors of judgment. What held the club back was a philosophy of management, a way of operating that placed control, low risk, and financial safety above any long-term ambition. This philosophy, repeated year after year, created the sense that West Ham lived trapped between two worlds. Too big to accept the mentality of a small club, yet governed by people who treat the institution as though it were too fragile to dare. And in the end, when you put all of this together, the grand promises, the stadium move, the missed opportunities, the lack of investment at decisive moments, you understand that this invisible ceiling is no accident. It was built, brick by brick, decision by decision, and while it remains in place, West Ham may reach brilliant moments, but they will never break the barrier that separates an ambitious club from a truly great one. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. To understand how this invisible ceiling works in practice, all you need to do is observe how West Ham's most important decisions are taken. Since the Sullivan era began, the club has operated in an extremely centralized manner. There is no modern structure like the one we see at ambitious clubs, with a strong sporting director, a scouting department with real influence, and a clear hierarchy. At West Ham for years, everything has been condensed into the figure of the owner and a very small circle of people. This creates an environment in which crucial decisions depend less on planning and more on the momentary preference of whoever sits at the top. As a result, the entire squad-building process becomes fragile, improvised, and often contradictory. While other clubs build a professional line between scouting, analysis, manager, and board, West Ham have often moved in the opposite direction. There have been countless moments over the past decade when the scouting department recommended players who were ignored, when managers asked for obvious reinforcements and received cheaper alternatives, or when negotiations were derailed by personal preferences linked to agents close to the club. Instead of an integrated system, there is a sequence of isolated decisions, taken case by case, rather than forming part of a continuous project. This creates a squad that is always patched together and never truly completed. And this pattern becomes especially clear during transfer windows. Every time West Ham get close to something big, stable European qualification, a competitive squad, a manager with a clear vision, the board adopt a conservative stance. One or two impact signings may be made to please the fans, but glaring gaps in the squad are left untouched. A missing center back, a midfielder who never arrives, a striker promised but never bought. The decision-makers prefer to believe the team can survive without filling essential positions, even when everyone knows that this will cost points and compromise the season. This is the ceiling at work. A club with the potential to take a leap forward, receiving only enough to avoid falling backwards. The lack of coherence is also a direct symptom of this model. There is no continuity of thought. Each window feels like a new project, or worse, a different improvisation. In one season, experienced players are targeted. In the next, young prospects. After that, the priority becomes physical profiles. And the following year, technical reinforcements. There is no philosophy unifying the choices. No clear line that says, this is how we want to play, and this is the type of player we want to sign. This absence of identity is a direct result of decisions made out of convenience, not out of long-term vision. And inevitably, managers are the ones who suffer the most. Regardless of their style, tactical approach, or competence, every West Ham manager eventually hits the same obstacle: a lack of autonomy. Some arrive asking for specific reinforcements and receive completely different profiles. Others try to refresh the squad, but are forced to work with players the club insists on keeping for reasons unrelated to football. And when results dip, the manager becomes the easiest target, while the structure that limited their work remains untouched. It is a draining cycle, repeated so many times that it has begun to feel normal to supporters. The case of David Moyes is perhaps the clearest example of this mechanism. He led the club through its most successful period in decades: consecutive European qualifications, a semi-final, a continental title. And yet, even after delivering results far beyond expectation, he never received consistent investment to turn that momentum into a lasting project. Every step forward was followed by a timid window. Every obvious squad need was addressed too late. The manager who put West Ham back on the European map was treated as someone expected to perform miracles constantly, without receiving the support required to compete with richer and better structured clubs. Moyes did not fail. He hit the ceiling. And this brings us to the most uncomfortable truth of all. If even the most successful manager of West Ham's modern era hit this limit, what can we expect from anyone else? As long as the method of governance remains the same, as long as decisions continue to be concentrated at the top and risk remains something to be avoided, any manager, whether Moyes, Nuno, Potter, or anyone else, will live the same story. Moments of brilliance, huge potential, but always interrupted by the invisible ceiling imposed by the club's own management. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. When we look at the players who have passed through West Ham in recent years, it becomes clear that the invisible ceiling does not affect only the board or the manager. It directly impacts the environment within the squad, the sense of future, and even the individual decisions of players who arrive with great potential. Footballers like Lucas Paqueta and Kudus, for example, quickly become figures who look bigger than the project surrounding them. They have quality, ambition, and the expectation of competing at the highest level, but they find a club that does not always act like one willing to match their pace. And this inevitably creates a mismatch between talent and direction. This mismatch makes West Ham, at various moments, seem to live in a parallel reality. On the pitch, flashes of an extremely competitive team appear, capable of facing major clubs and generating real hope among supporters. But off the pitch, the management continue to operate with an excessively conservative mentality. It is as though the squad try to climb the stairs while the structure holds tightly to the handrail, afraid of taking the next step. And when players notice that the club are not matching their ambition, they begin to view West Ham as a stage rather than a destination. This phenomenon creates a kind of silent wear. Instead of building a group united by the desire to achieve something great, the club ends up creating an environment in which every exceptional talent carries doubts about the future. This doubt spreads through the dressing room, affecting atmosphere, confidence, and even performance. Not because of a lack of professionalism, but because no player enjoys feeling that they are giving more than the club are willing to offer. And when this feeling repeats itself season after season, it becomes part of the team's identity. A club with the potential for much more, but rarely willing to take control and pursue it. And here lies a crucial point. While modern clubs invest in infrastructure, scouting, data analysis, professional management, and full integration between departments, West Ham remains stuck in outdated practices. In a sport that grows more demanding every year, this lack of modernization becomes a heavy burden. The absence of a culture of innovation forces the club to depend too much on individual moments, isolated good spells and talents who appear almost by chance. And naturally, that is nowhere near enough for anyone aiming to compete regularly at the highest level. This stagnation also impacts the perspective of the supporters. Many fans no longer allow themselves to be swayed by summer promises, presentations of new projects, or speeches about taking the next step. West Ham supporters are passionate, loyal, and extremely perceptive. They see clearly when there is genuine ambition and when there is merely decoration. And today, increasingly, the feeling is that the board try to keep the club in a comfortable state, good enough to survive, but never bold enough to consistently trouble the biggest sides. This creates a dilemma for West Ham's future. Either the club truly decide to break through this invisible ceiling and modernize their structure from top to bottom, or they will continue to live the same repetitive cycle. Moments of brilliance followed by avoidable retreats. Great players who pass through but never stay long enough to build an era. Managers who achieve impressive heights but end up abandoned the moment ambition is needed most. West Ham have proven many times that they have the potential for far more. But potential without action becomes nothing more than a memory of what could have been. And in the end, the inevitable question is simple but profound. How much longer will this invisible ceiling control West Ham's destiny? As long as it exists, the club may experience good moments, but will never reach the level supporters dream of, and which, truthfully, the club deserves. Only when the mentality at the top finally changes will West Ham be able to break this barrier and turn ambition into reality. Until then, supporters will continue to wait and demand, because without pressure, this ceiling will remain firm, preventing the club from reaching everything that should already be theirs by right. So that's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, share, and of course subscribe to the channel for more. Take care, and I'll see you next time.